Ukraine. Viewer discretion advised. This video contains real accounts of violent crime and murder involving multiple victims, including children. All events are documented and factual.
It was January 1996, Ukraine, the middle of winter. Snow covered the fields and the roads and the rooftops of the small houses that lined the quiet rural streets. Someone had set one of those houses on fire. By the time neighbors reached the burning building, there was nothing they could do. When the flames finally died and investigators moved through what remained, they found 4 bodies inside. A family. Gone. Police initially assumed it was an accident. It was not an accident. Within weeks, another family was found. Then another. Then another. Each time, the same pattern. An isolated house, every person inside killed, the building set on fire to destroy the evidence. No witnesses, no survivors. Whoever was doing this was not stopping. By the time Anatoly Onoprienko was finally arrested, 52 people were dead across the Ukrainian countryside. Men, women, elderly, children, entire families erased from the earth in a single night. He told investigators he felt nothing. He told them he was chosen. He told them he would do it all again. Anatoly Onoprienko was born on July 25, 1959, in Lasky, a small village in the Zhytomyr region of Ukraine, then still part of the Soviet Union. His childhood was marked immediately by loss. When Onoprienko was 4 years old, his mother died. His father, unable to cope with raising 2 sons alone, made a decision that would define everything that came after. He placed Anatoly in a state orphanage. He kept the older brother at home. Anatoly grew up knowing his father had chosen his brother over him, that he had been deemed the one worth discarding. That distinction, being the child who was left, carved something out of him that never grew back. Life in Soviet orphanages of that era was harsh, cold, institutional, without warmth or individual attention. Children raised in them often described a childhood defined by survival rather than nurturing. Onoprienko later spoke about those years with a flatness that suggested he had long since stopped expecting anything different from the world. As a young adult, he drifted. He worked various jobs, served briefly in the Soviet maritime fleet, had relationships that never lasted. He accumulated frustrations and resentments quietly, the way still water accumulates pressure beneath a frozen surface. In 1989, he committed his first known murders, killing 6 people during a robbery alongside an accomplice. The accomplice was caught. Onoprienko was not. He disappeared, and for several years, nothing. Then, in 1995, something shifted. Something that had been building for years finally broke through the surface. The killing began in earnest. The crimes. Onoprienko's method was deliberate and consistent in a way that still disturbs investigators who studied it. He targeted isolated houses, farmhouses, and small rural homes sitting apart from neighbors, away from main roads, in the kind of darkness that swallows sound completely. He would arrive at night. He would kill everyone inside using firearms, axes, or whatever was available. Then he would set fire to the building. He left no survivors, ever. This was not accidental. Onoprienko himself explained it with a logic that is deeply unsettling in its clarity. Survivors meant witnesses. Witnesses meant capture, and he had no intention of being caught. If a neighbor happened to be passing and saw him, they died too. If someone heard the noise and came to investigate, they died too. He extended his perimeter of silence outward as far as necessary. Anyone who entered his radius on those nights did not leave it. Between December 1995 and March 1996, just 4 months, he killed 52 people across the Zhytomyr and Lviv regions of Ukraine. The investigation. Ukrainian authorities knew early that they were dealing with something unprecedented. The pattern was unmistakable once investigators began connecting the cases. The isolation of the targets, the total elimination of witnesses, the fires. A task force was assembled. Hundreds of officers were deployed across the affected regions. They had almost nothing to work with. No witnesses, no forensic trail that led anywhere useful, no clear geographic center to the attacks. The killer seemed to move randomly, which made predicting his next location nearly impossible. What broke the case was not sophisticated detective work. It was a relative. In April 1996, Onoprienko was staying with a cousin named Pyotr Onoprienko in the town of Zhytomyr. The cousin had become increasingly disturbed by things he had noticed: weapons, items that didn't belong, a behavior in Anatoly that he could not name but could not ignore. He contacted police. Officers arrived at the cousin's home and found Onoprienko there. When they searched the premises, they found a sawn-off shotgun, other weapons, and items stolen from his victims' homes: jewelry, documents, personal belongings he had taken as trophies. He was arrested without resistance. He seemed almost relieved. What happened in the interrogation room after Onoprienko's arrest is the part of this case that investigators still find most difficult to describe. He confessed immediately and completely. He provided detailed accounts of every killing: the location, the family, the method, the sequence of events. He was precise. He was calm. He showed no distress and no remorse. But it was not just what he confessed to that disturbed his interrogators. It was how he explained it. Onoprienko told investigators that he had been chosen, that a higher force, he described it in different ways at different times, sometimes a voice, sometimes a presence, had selected him to carry out these killings. He was not a murderer in his own mind. He was an instrument, a weapon aimed by something beyond himself at targets he had no personal connection to. He described killing children with the same flat affect as he described killing adults. There was no hierarchy of guilt in his accounting. No moment that was harder than another. No face that stayed with him. He said he felt nothing after any of it. When asked if he feared death, if he feared what would happen to him now, he said no. He said he expected to be freed. He said the force that had chosen him would not allow him to be kept. Psychiatrists who evaluated him struggled to place him within existing frameworks. He was not classically psychotic in the way that suggested a complete break from reality. He was not unintelligent. He understood the world around him clearly. What he appeared to lack, entirely and without exception, was any emotional connection to other human beings whatsoever. Not diminished, not damaged, absent. The victims, 52 people. The youngest victims were children. Some were infants. Entire family lines ended on single nights in January and February and March of 1996. Grandparents and parents and children, and sometimes neighbors who had simply been in the wrong place. Rural Ukrainian communities of that era were tight-knit in the way that isolated places always are. When a family was found, the grief spread immediately through the surrounding villages. People began sleeping with weapons. People stopped opening their doors after dark. People looked at strangers on the road differently. The fear that Onoprienko created across those 4 months was not abstract. It settled into the daily life of an entire region and stayed there long after he was caught. For many of the families of victims, the arrest brought no real relief. The scale of what had been taken from them was simply too large for any courtroom process to address. 52 people, entire branches of families, futures that never happened. Their names are not well known outside Ukraine. Most of them never will be. That is its own kind of injustice. Onoprienko's trial took place in 1999. He was convicted of 52 murders and sentenced to death. He showed no reaction to the sentence. However, Ukraine had placed a moratorium on the death penalty as part of its process of joining the Council of Europe. His sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, making him one of the first people in Ukraine to receive a formal life sentence under the new legal framework. He remained in prison for the rest of his life, occasionally giving interviews in which he continued to speak about being chosen, about forces beyond himself, about the killings in the same flat and disconnected tone he had used from the moment of his arrest. In 2013, Anatoly Onoprienko died in prison of heart failure. He was 54 years old. He never expressed remorse. Not once in 17 years of imprisonment did he offer a single word that acknowledged the 52 people he had killed as human beings whose lives had mattered. To the end, they were simply part of what he had been sent to do. There is something specific about Onoprienko that separates him from most of the killers history has documented. Most killers, even the most prolific ones, have something that connects them to their crimes. A rage, a desire, a compulsion that is recognizably human even when it is monstrous. something that makes the violence legible, however horrifying. Onoprienko had none of that. He killed 52 people and felt nothing, not satisfaction, not release, not even the dark pleasure that drives most killers to continue. Nothing. He described the killings the way a person might describe completing a task assigned to them by someone else, something that needed doing, now done, moving on. That absence of feeling is perhaps the most disturbing thing a human being can be, because we understand rage, we understand obsession, we understand the twisting of desire into violence, but nothing, genuine, total, complete nothing, is something we have no framework for. Anatoly Onoprienko looked at 52 human beings and saw objects to be removed. And somewhere in the frozen Ukrainian countryside, the houses where those families lived still stand. Some of them rebuilt, some of them still scarred.